And we're back, 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 and we're back. Hello! Oh my gosh. Do you see this light coming in? It's the sun from outside coming through these windows. And I know when the light hits my jacket this way that it means it is Storytime with Uncle Scotty. And I happen to be your host, Uncle Scotty. We have our own mugs. Hope everybody out there is enjoying your own mug, whether it looks like this or it looks like something else. If you're interested in your own mug, you can always check us out on Patreon. Thank you to everyone out there who is supporting on Patreon, getting your own stories, your own mugs, your own bookmarks, and not wasting any time at all. We have just started reading The Fantastic Mr. Fox, Monsieur Fox et le Fantastique, and we have learned about the three farmers, Bogus, Bunce, Bean, and Mr. Fox, and Mrs. Fox. We haven't heard her say anything yet. So let's figure out what happens next. The farmers have a plan to catch Mr. Fox, who is always robbing, taking dinner from them. Chapter 3, The Shooting. "Well, my darling," said Mr. Fox, "what shall it be tonight?" "I think we'll have duck tonight," said Mrs. Fox. "Bring us 2 fat ducks, if you please, one for you and me, and one for the children." "Ducks it shall be," said Mr. Fox. "Bunce's best." "Now do be careful," said Mrs. Fox. "My darling," said Mr. Fox, "I can smell those goons a mile away. I can even smell one from the other. Bogus gives off a filthy stink of rotten chicken skins. Bunce reeks of goose livers, and as for Bean, the fumes of apple cider hang around him like poisonous gases." "Yes, but just don't get careless," said Mrs. Fox. "You know they'll be waiting for you, all 3 of them." "Don't you worry about me," said Mr. Fox. "I'll see you later." But Mr. Fox would not have been quite so cocky had he known exactly where the 3 farmers were waiting at the moment. They were just outside the entrance to the hole, each one crouching behind a tree with his gun loaded. And what more, they had chosen their positions very carefully, making sure that the wind was not blowing from them towards the foxhole. In fact, it was blowing the opposite direction. There was no chance of them being smelled out. Mr. Fox crept up the dark tunnel to the mouth of the hole. He poked his long, handsome face out into the night air and sniffed once. He moved an inch or 2 forward and stopped. He sniffed again. He was always especially careful when coming out of his hole. He inched forward a little more. The front half of his body was now out in the open. His black nose twitched from side to side, sniffing and sniffing for the scent of danger. He found none, and he was just about to go trotting forward into the wood when he heard, or thought he heard, a tiny noise, a soft rustling sound as though someone had moved a foot ever so gently through a patch of dry leaves. Mr. Fox flattened his body against the ground and lay very still, his ears pricked. He waited a long time, but he heard nothing more. "It must have been a field mouse," he told himself, "or some other small animal." He crept a little further out of the hole, then further still. He was almost right out in the open now. He took a careful last look around. The wood was murky and very still. Somewhere in the sky, the moon was shining. Just then, his sharp night eyes caught a glint of something bright behind a tree not far away. It was a small silver speck of moonlight shining on a polished surface. Mr. Fox lay still, watching it. What on earth was it? Now it was moving. It was coming up, and great heavens! It was the barrel of a gun! Quick as a whip, Mr. Fox jumped back into his hole, and at that same instant the entire wood seemed to explode around him. Bang, bang! Bang, bang! Bang, bang! The smoke from the 3 guns floated upward into the night air. Bogus and Bunce and Bean came out from behind their trees and walked towards the hole. "Did we get him?" said Bean. One of them shone a flashlight on the hole. And there on the ground, in the circle of light, half in and half out of the hole, lay the poor, tattered, blood-stained remains of a fox's tail. Bean picked it up. "We got the tail, but we missed the fox," he said, tossing the thing away. And here you can see, "We got the tail, but we missed the fox." "Dang and blast," said Bogus. "We shot too late. We should have let fly the moment he poked his head out." He won't be poking it out again in a hurry," Bunt said. Bean pulled the flask from his pocket and took a swig of cider or water. Then he said, "It'll take 3 days at least before he gets hungry enough to come out again. I'm not sitting here waiting for that. Let's dig him out." Said Bogus. "Now you're talking sense. We can dig him out in a couple of hours. We know he's down there." "I reckon there's a whole family of them down there in that hole," Bunt said. "Then we'll have all of them," said Ben. "Get the shovels." Should we do one more? Okay, we'll do one more. Chapter 4. The Terrible Shovels. Down the hole, Mrs. Fox was tenderly licking the stump of Mr. Fox's tail to stop the bleeding. "It was the finest tail for miles around," she said in between licks. "It hurts," said Mr. Fox. "I know it does, sweetheart, but it'll soon get better." "And it will soon grow again, Dad," said one of the small foxes. "It will never grow again," said Mr. Fox. "I shall be tailless for the rest of my life." He looked very sad, very glum. There was no food for the foxes that night, and soon the children dozed off. Then Mrs. Fox dozed off, but Mr. Fox couldn't sleep because of the pain in the stump of his tail. "Well," he thought, "I suppose I'm lucky to be alive at all. And now they've found our hole, we're going to have to move out as soon as possible. We'll never get any peace if we—" What was that? He turned his head sharply and listened. The noise he heard was now the most frightening noise a fox could ever hear. The scrape, 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 scraping of shovels digging into the soil. "Wake up!" he shouted. "They're digging us out!" Mrs. Fox was wide awake in 1 second. Bing! She sat up, quivering all over. "Are you sure that's it?" she whispered. "I'm positive. Listen." "They'll kill my children," cried Mrs. Fox. "Never," said Mr. Fox. "But, darling, they will," sobbed Mrs. Fox. "You know they will." Scrunch, scrunch, scrunch went the shovels above their heads. Small stones and bits of earth began falling from the roof of the tunnel. "How will they kill us, Mommy?" asked one of the small foxes. His round black eyes were huge with fright. "Will there be dogs?" Mrs. Fox began to cry. She gathered her 4 children close to her and held them tight. Suddenly, there was an especially loud crunch above their heads, and the sharp end of a shovel came right through the ceiling. "This is it! Mr. Fox and Mrs. Fox, there's a shovel coming through the ceiling." The sight of this awful thing seemed to have an electric effect upon Mr. Fox. He jumped up and shouted, "I've got it! Come on! There's not a moment to lose! Why didn't I think of it before?" "Think of what, Dad?" "A fox can dig quicker than a man," shouted Mr. Fox, beginning to dig. "Nobody in the world can dig as fast as a fox." The soil began to fly out furiously behind Mr. Fox, as he started to dig for dear life with his front feet. Mrs. Fox ran forward to help him. So did the 4 children. "Go downwards," ordered Mr. Fox. "We've got to go deep as we possibly can." The tunnel began to grow longer and longer. It sloped steeply downward. Deeper and deeper below the surface of the ground it went. The mother and the father and all 4 of the children were digging together. Their front legs were moving so fast you couldn't see them. And gradually the scrunching and scraping of the shovels became fainter and fainter. Scrunch, scrunch, scrunch. After about an hour, ding, Mr. Fox stopped digging. "Hold it," he said. They all stopped. They turned and looked back up the long tunnel they had just dug. All was quiet. "Phew," said Mr. Fox. "I think we've done it. They'll never get as deep as this. Well done, everyone, well done." They all sat down, panting for breath. And Mrs. Fox said to her children, "I should like you to know that if it wasn't for your father, we should all be dead by now. Your father is a fantastic fox." Mr. Fox looked at his wife and she smiled. He loved her more than ever when she said things like that. And we'll find out what happens next time on Storytime with Uncle Scotty. Great thing about what Mrs. Fox said, your father is a fantastic fox. Hashtag alliteration. Thank you for joining us for this issue of Storytime. I've been your host, Uncle Scotty. We're everyone mugs, and I will see you next time. Bye!